Hi, you're listening to Boggy Talk, Faith Conversations in the Mud, a resource of Church on Bayshore.
Hey, welcome to Boggy Talk. Hope you're doing well. You doing all right, sir, James Ross?
Man, I am doing what King. Oh my gosh, don't even try. Thou art doing well.
Yeah.
How doest thou?
I doest, thou fairest. I think, man, I'm so glad we
the
don't
twain
have
of us are here on twain. No, twain of us. The twain of us are here.
Yeah.
With twain he covered his eyes, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he flew.
Wow.
Twain, seriously.
That's
two.
right, two. All right, yeah. That's I
Isaiah
get it.
chapter 6.
There you go.
Yeah.
Context. Yeah.
If you ever think, is this language like still culturally relevant? That word right there just
Twain.
decides it. Twain.
Twain. All right.
I think of Samuel Langhorne Clemens.
Well, it is the twain.
Do you?
No, I don't.
You don't know who Samuel Langhorne Clemens is?
I mean, the name is familiar.
It's Mark Twain's real name.
I was just going to say Mark Twain, like, because you were talking about Twain.
Yeah.
It is the 20th week of November, the 2nd. Does that work?
Oh, no, I don't think that.
Can I just make that up?
You might want to censor that word there that you just used. But we're.
It's probably not good.
I don't know. So we're doing good. No cap. Speaking of words that I don't know how to use.
Yeah.
Anyway, people still say no cap?
Probably not, because we just said it.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
true.
Officially not
it's
cool.
Officially,
it's made its way to our generation, so it's not cool anymore.
Not cool anymore now that we're saying it.
You drip
cap. Yep,
drip
there you
cap.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got some drip on today, man.
I mean, it's
middle-aged. It's middle-aged dad drip.
This is a Goodwill find right here.
Yeah.
This little sweater vest I'm wearing.
But the T-shirt under the sweater vest, it's like
it's my Bayshore T-shirt.
It's like I'm really not fancy, but I'm gonna make you think I could be.
I'm kind of fancy.
I could be, right?
I could be fancy.
I could be fancy.
I like to live that way. I'm not fancy, but I could be.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So this past weekend we had Disciple Now week.
Yeah.
Students. We had so many students involved and leaders, and we hosted.
We kind of had the weekend off, man. We didn't have to work all week.
Well, we were a host home, so we had
you really
8th grade girls at our home.
And obviously I was joking.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That was good. And then this coming weekend is the Pastors Conference, the Florida Baptist
Pastors Conference. Yes.
Yeah. So
I'm excited for it. There's been a lot of
exciting. Their address is Exciting Idlewild Way. That's like the name. They built their own road, I guess. So can we change it to Exciting Bayshore Way?
Dude, we have Bayshore Drive. It's named after our church.
There you go. That's right.
That's not true. That's not true. We changed
Bayshore.
the name because people are like, where's that?
And you know what?
Go behind the other big church. It's there.
There it is. It's down by
people
the water.
Be like, oh, your church is actually kind of big. I'm like, yeah, just because there's a bigger church next to ours doesn't mean.
That's right. It is on the water, and that
it is on the water.
Is so nice.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Except for at 3:00 in the afternoon in my office.
Oh man, my window is from 10 to 11. Our new office is the sun just I have to leave my office and go work somewhere else because we don't have shades yet, and
I do that.
The sun just comes right in. You can't see. It's the blinding.
You can come down here to the Boggy Talk cellar.
I could come to the basement of the catacombs of.
Boggy Talk.
Yeah, that's right. I'm actually underwater.
Ghosts of Deacons Past are in here.
This is the old robing room for the choir. So, and you know what's exciting too is that in exactly a year it will be election. It will be election week. So we have a year into our next presidential election.
And so we're going to talk about that for the next year. Because you won't get enough of that anywhere.
That's
right. Ready? Buckle up, Buttercup.
Oh, man. I was just kind of lamenting that as I looked at the calendar. I was like, oh, man, this Tuesday's election day. And then that means it's a year will be election day.
Buckle up, Buttercup is also some bad reference.
Yeah, probably so. Well, anyway, let's get into what we're talking about today. Yeah. So we're talking about people today. And that could be an endless supply of conversation. But specifically winning with people. And we're talking about this because we've actually been reading a book as a staff called Winning with People by John Maxwell, who is an author, former pastor, now author, leadership consultant.
Self-proclaimed leadership guru.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I've read a lot of John Maxwell recently as I've read it over the years, but recently just some of his resources as I'm working on my doctorate in leadership. And
nice flex there, Justin.
It's one of those like. That wasn't a humble brag, and I realized it kind of sounded like it afterwards. But anyway, I realized that a lot of his stuff is really similar.
What's that like not having a doctorate, Justin?
I know, right? What's it like to have time? I don't know.
Just kidding.
So what's funny is that in a lot of his stuff, he's like, I'm going to tell you these things, but you need to go read this book that I wrote to find out more. And like, a lot of his books now are like that. So anyway, I'm winning with people. And really, this is something that we've, as a staff, have been talking about, just really in terms of interpersonal relationships within the church and on the staff team and, relationships with the church. But really, this is something that hits for every believer because essentially our faith is not, though our relationship with God is a vertical relationship with Him, it is designed also to be horizontal, and it is a communal faith that we are part of a family of God, and you can't not deal with people.
That's right.
In your
you
life.
Can't not deal with people.
How do you do that well? How do we as Christians navigate relationships in a winsome manner?
Winsome, nice.
Winsome, I like that word. Winsome.
Pun too, because winning with people and winsome.
With people. You see what it did?
Winsome manner. You're going to win some people.
So let's talk about relationships, and really, if you could boil it all down, like this, there's a good book. The book you can hold, I can't talk. You could read the whole book, but if you were to boil it down to one essential takeaway, one of many, but the primary, what would you say that would be?
Wow, Justin. Yeah. I mean, that's a big question.
Yeah.
So I think that I've read this book before when all the cultural references were relevant. Now they're not as much.
Right.
But, I think what stuck with me the most 20 years ago and probably still today, and I can't remember if it's the first, there's like parts of the book, and I can't remember if it's the first chapter or second. It's called the lens principle. I think it's the first one.
It is the first one.
And it's just talking about the way you see the world and being aware of that and how much that affects your relationships. And he gives a story about a guy. I think I've used this in a sermon before. He uses the story about a guy who is moving out of a town, and he goes to like this gas station where this old man is sitting before he goes into the new town. And he says like, "Hey, what's it like, in your town?" And the old man says, "Well, what's it like in the town you come from?" And he begins to describe, the people and how problematic they were and all these complaints. And the old man says, "It's going to be exactly like that in this town."
Yeah.
And the point is that like typically, our lens affects our relationships. And I've seen this played out in marriages, second marriages, friendships, churches, all kinds of things. And I think that, it's just true. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than the reality is we need to be aware of our perception and our perspective, and our experiences are typically clouding our view of people or affecting our view of people. And so we got to be aware. I mean, and it is what it is, right? Like if you've been through trauma, especially, like it's not like you can be like, all right, forget that. You know what I mean? But I think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the old saying, wherever you go, there you are. And that's so true.
That's good.
This. It's like,
that's deep.
Profound.
That's deep, Justin.
That's
deep
today. But it's so true. Wherever you go, like you're going to take your issues with you.
Yeah.
And so really understanding, I think this is a great principle for, People 101, People Skills 101 is recognizing what you bring to the table. So in that chapter about lens, he identifies like 5 specific things that determine how we see others. And he basically says who we are determines how we see others. And he says the first is genetics.
Yep.
There's some things that you didn't determine your genetics. They just are what they are. And there's the whole nature versus nurture debate. And really, there is a lot to nature. There is a lot to our genetics and predispositions for things. The second is our self-image, how we view ourselves. 3 is our experiences that shape us. And the 4th thing is really our attitude and choices in response to those experiences. And that is key because we can both have the exact same experience, but our attitude and response to those experiences really determine how we see others and ourselves.
That is probably, if you were to say like, what is the thing that you have to deal with your children with the most in parenting and instruction? It's probably that. Like, it's like, hey, I understand. I have 6 kids in my house, so I understand what they're doing is wrong. But right now, I'm talking to you about your reaction, your response, and I mean, like, we escalate situations so often, right? Like because of how we respond in situations, and it's like, I think if anything is maturity for me, it's like just been the willingness to recognize that and be like, I don't need to respond. I don't need to respond this way. Yeah. I'm probably right about what I would say. You know what I mean? And so that's a good one. What was the 5th one?
And the 5th one is our friends. And I
he
expanded
who walks
this.
with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm.
Exactly. And this is, I think, John Maxwell is, a generation or two above us. I would add to friends.
Two.
Yeah, definitely two.
Yeah.
And so I think from a cultural where we are now, I would add to that / influences because because our influence, the relationships influence us, but also that helps really include some of the social media aspects, just who we are listening to. That's right. The influences that we are feeding our minds with. Friends would be a huge piece of that, but also just who we're spending time learning from, books we're reading, and just who we're listening to.
Instagram.
Yeah, all those things. So those
Pauly
things.
Shore, all you guys following Pauly Shore on Instagram. That was so random.
I think if you had not said that, I may have gone the rest of my life and never thought about Pauly Shore again.
That was so random. Okay, sorry. I don't know.
I wonder what's he doing? He was in
How was that in my brain?
Why did you say that?
I don't know.
Pauly Shore. I mean, he was like in every late 90s.
I haven't seen Biodome lately or Encino Man lately. It just just came out.
I don't know what happened to him.
Or son-in-law.
Yeah.
Man, I can't believe I remember all this.
You're on a roll.
Okay, anyway, sorry, back to the serious winning with people.
So recognizing these things about us helps us understand what we bring to the table. Because what we bring to the table really is how really the filter that we see other people through. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Well, and he talks too, about when you're the one in authority, how it's on you to make the approachability and connection happen more than the other. And I think in a parenting relationship, and if you're if you're a supervisor at work, if you're a pastor, if you're a life group leader, if you're whatever, I think there's I think, and this is probably why we really wanted to talk about this, is ministry is not just about theology. It is about relationship skills. And if you step into some kind of leadership role, whatever that role is, you don't have to be in vocational ministry. You then assume, hey, I'm going to be responsible for developing my relationship skills. And if you aren't, then you shouldn't be in that role. Right. And so I think that, you have to be aware of this going on, those dynamics that you just brought up. You have to be aware that you're bringing things to the table and other people bringing to the table, and try to work on making that cohesive as the leader, as the authority. I hate that word, but yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think, if we look at the ministry as a profession, as a whole, we've really shifted. I've actually just been reading some things on this in an ethics course, but it's how the role of minister has changed from really being this profession to now how the perception has changed of what ministers do and who they are. And so no longer is it just I have authority, do what I say. So now it is 100% contingent upon relationship, because there's not this natural trust. And I would venture to say that for those in leadership in the church, for our life group leaders, for deacons, while they're still as people, we understand that the Bible does give us clarity for the church as it runs and leaders. There still is this cultural baggage we have to work through. There is no, I really don't know if and this is off the top of my head, so it could be wrong, you can push back on this. I don't know if really any role where there's just 100% automatic assumed trust anymore. Maybe there is, and maybe there should be, but I just think that's something we have to acknowledge as part of our culture. And maybe it's not 100%, maybe it's 90%, I don't know. But I just think that
No, will you please get that precisely right?
I'm going to do a survey really quick. I just think there's just not automatically assumed trust anymore. And as a pastor, or whether you're a life group leader, or you're just trying to minister to someone in general, there has to be a relationship formed or forged for there to be just serious weight given to what you're saying. And, I think that's just something we have to understand. And so that gets to, how do we build relationships? How do we, how do we relate to people? Are we aware of how we come across? Are we aware of how people receive us? Are we self-aware enough to recognize that we have deficiencies or areas that we need to grow?
Yeah, that's been one of the more frustrating things for me, and just relating with people. And I mean, in ministry, you're just always around people. Our job is being around people. Is just a lack of self-awareness that so many people have. And I think that, you referenced it, but social media, our lack of as much of a communal living, it's just created a lack of two-way conversation. And so people don't like hear criticism as much. And I think like, you know, while there's some good in that, by and large, I think it's bad because we're not hearing, you know, just the things that we need to grow in. So I just encounter in ministry, in the church, and in life, people lacking self-awareness. And I think, you know, and I think that's important. And I'll just push back because I think some people, sorry, I'm not pushing back. Some people would push back and be like, well, you know, you're talking about people skills, but the church is about, you know, theology. It's about the Bible. It's about character. Absolutely. And you're right. People can be good with people and manipulate them and
absolutely.
use them. We fully acknowledge that. On the flip side, though, if you're not, and you're not growing in your ability to relate with people, it is really going to be a barrier to you being faithful in ministry. And I would say that kind of like Steve Besner actually wrote about this one time, how kind of the group ahead of us, Gen X, boomers, like there was such a focus on like pragmatic to a fault in the church. And then below us, there's been such a focus on theology, which is great, and biblical fidelity, which is great. But then it's almost like they threw out all of that leadership principles. And so we have all these guys that know the Bible and don't know how to lead.
Right.
And it's like, you really do need both.
Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely do need both. I'm more and more convinced of that it, you know, we've said people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. Like that's a quote.
We came up with that.
That is original to
Justin
Boggy Talk. But
if you use that, you owe us $5 every use. That's
right. But I think that's so true. And I think what you're saying is so true, because I think, you know, as we get to know I would say that because God is so good, like the more you study theology, I think the more you want to, because you realize like, this is incredible that God has revealed himself and we begin to know more. But if we're doing that and our pride is growing and then we're not doing it well, but also like everything, there's the orthodoxy and there's orthopraxy, that there has to be a practice of
Say that again, Justin.
Orthodoxy and the orthopraxy.
Good words.
You know, and I liken it to this, like in worship, I talk about the rhythm of theology and doxology. There has to be the truth, and then there has to be the response to the truth. Like there's that's why we sing songs that are sometimes wordy, but then we also take moments in worship to say like, hallelujah, God,
Jesus,
you're good.
Jesus,
you know, reflect that over and over.
I hate repeating words. We said Jesus. You hate repeating Jesus' name?
That same rhythm applies.
You're not going to like heaven then.
That's so funny. The same rhythm applies to theology. Like you have to be able to flesh it out in practice in community, because one, that's the Bible is written to community. It's written to the people. And that's just what we're called to do as our faith. So it's just our heads can become puffed up and really we're not seeing the transformation in our own lives or other people if it just stays in our head. Or if we're only instructing and if we know all the truth, but you know, like Paul writes, we can know all these things. If we have not love, we're just noisy cymbals.
Yeah.
So I think that's a way that it gets practiced out. So it is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could talk about this for a long time, but I would say like, so kind of speaking to like younger leaders, and I'm sure there's older that fit in this category that are like, well, you know, I should be trusted because I know the Bible and I know these things and I'm the pastor or I'm the Sunday school leader or whatever it might be, or even at work, right? Like I'm in this position, like, you know, no, Jesus told Matthew and John, right? James and John, he said, hey, you see how the Gentiles rule, right? How they lead, they rule it over. Not you. Whoever wants to be great needs to become last. Yeah. You should be if you want to be served, you should be a servant of all. And for the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. So like, and I'm not saying I am, but if I am like becoming very knowledgeable in the word and very discerning about how to lead our church, then I need to say, how can I serve people and meet people where they are to help them see what I see? Like, and so I don't understand, like I would just say, and again, I have a long way to go, but at 41, I do know more than I've ever known. I got a long way to go.
Yeah, not done.
Yeah, no, not done at all. but I feel a desire more and more to humble myself before people and listen and understand and discern. And, I was hanging out with a pastor who's a little bit younger than me, a good bit younger than me. Fine. I'm old.
It's hard to admit that, right?
He struggled a little bit with leadership, and we were talking about a relational situation. Dude, he got so defensive. And I was like, and I didn't say anything because I just felt like it was the right time. But I'm like, this is why your church is such a struggle for you.
Yeah.
Because you're probably like this a lot. I didn't say it, but I was thinking it, and I'm like, that's just a people skill, right? Like, humble yourself, don't be defensive, like all those kind of things. And I'm sure there's baggage coming into that. So I would just say, like, I do think that there is so much that is relational and it's not theological. Even people who leave churches, it's often relational, not theological. People choose churches over personality versus theology all the time. I hate that, but they do. So this is valuable. That's all I'll say. Yeah,
absolutely.
you can put a bow on it if you want.
I was just thinking, and just the best advice that I could think of, if someone said, hey, what's the best advice for dealing with people or relating to people? I would say this, is that
stop, drop, shut them down, open up shop.
There you go. That's it. That's it.
Oh, that wasn't it? That's not it?
I would say this, is that you have to be like, it comes back to identity, and don't need or expect something from someone that you're designed to only get from Jesus. And then when you have that settled, you can be so free in relationships that you don't need validation from every person. You don't need, that doesn't mean that you don't need other people, because God does use other people, but God meets the need. He sometimes uses other people to meet that need and works through them, but God's the one who meets the need. So, if I'm looking to other people for validation, then I'm going to be constantly disappointed. If I'm looking to them to build my platform, to build my pride, then I'm going to, ultimately suffocate them with my desire for more. It just comes back to just being in a place where you don't need those things from people because you have them already in Christ. So settle your identity in Christ and you'll win with people. There you go.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah. All right. So, there's a bow. And now we're moving on. So 2 questions. We got 2 questions for the day. First question is, what are some practical things that a husband or wife can do to study each other? So this comes from, we've talked about this the past few weeks on Sunday mornings, husbands and wives and marriage. And that was one of the points from the sermon was, never stop studying and getting to know, because there's always more to know. So what are some practical things that can happen?
So I actually ran out of time, believe it or not, in that sermon. And so I had some things I was going to go over there, but I ran out of time. So
there you go. All right. So what were you going to say? How have you studied Christy Ross?
Well, I would say you can stare at your spouse.
Just stare.
I mean, it gets creepy sometimes, but I mean, you should enjoy God's creation and beauty. That's okay, you know. But then I would also, some people are like, wait, did he just say that? Yeah. Then I would just say, listen. Listen.
Yeah.
And, I think that, in marriage, your spouse often goes on and on about things that you truly don't care about, but you care about them.
Yeah.
And you will learn more about who they are as you listen to them. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? And so you're able to really discern their heart. Don't try to correct everything they say that's wrong, but, that would be that. Intentional time dating. I mean, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go, if you don't have money and time, you don't have to go out to dinner, but maybe, figure out a way to have dessert together after you put the kids to bed. If you still have kids, sit out back, sit out front, whatever. That's helpful. I think walking through some kind of devotional together is helpful, where you discuss together, being a part of the same small group. You get to study each other. And there's just a lot of tools out there available to you as well. Go to a marriage retreat if you could, or just a retreat, go on vacation. Ask them.
Yeah. Just ask.
Those kind of things.
Ask questions. So. Yeah. I think that's all good. I would just say, listen, and listen some more. And, one of the things that we have found ourselves asking each other is like if we've got free time or if we've got a free moment we're going on today, what do you want to do? And we know, that's our chance to say what we want to do, just ask those questions. And then, if you're asking those questions, then you eventually learn, I bet you can anticipate what the other one's going to want or need, and then you can just meet those needs. I would say it just comes back to you gotta make space for this. You got to make time for this, and every season of your life it's going to look different. And don't hold someone else what they're doing up as your expectation. Like what you said, like when our kids were little, it used to be put them to bed early so we actually had time to talk, and we didn't get to go out to dinner, but we would stop by and pick up dessert, and we would have that after the kids went to bed, or we would cook ourselves a real meal after the kids went to bed. We're like, they had this, but we're going to actually cook again. Whatever, you just find out what works for you, and just spend that time together. Like, I think that's what happens is life gets busier and busier, especially as kids get involved. And then as kids get older, like you just lose some of the common things that hold you together in friendship in your relationship. And then you find people whose kids move out and are like, what? I don't even know you anymore. You don't want to be in that position.
No, you don't.
So yeah.
Two other thoughts is, one is, these two questions are very helpful. How are you? And, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Those are very helpful questions. And then the second thing I would say is I talked about the meaning of marriage during our marriage series being the most I think theologically meaningful book for me. But I think practically speaking, his needs, her needs is really helpful because I think almost every woman and man would identify with those being 5 very valuable needs. And so that's a good starting place.
Yeah.
How am I doing in that area? And then actually caring about those areas. Because kind of back to winning with people, so many marriages are because we're not intentional in the relationship, and so many marriages that fail are because we're not intentional in a relationship.
That's right. All right. Well, if you have any more questions about that, you can ask our wives because they're good at that. Anyway, or you can ask us. Here we go. Next question is, hey, you've referenced Taylor Swift in some sermons and on this podcast. So should our children be listening to Taylor Swift? Maybe.
I mean, go back to the marriage. For clarity, by the way, I am not a 41-year-old man driving around listening to Taylor Swift on a regular basis. However, I listen to lots of music. And I very much believe that she and whoever helps her write on different occasions is a great songwriter and that she articulates things that a lot of people are thinking very well.
Yeah.
That's my respect for Taylor Swift and her music. And some of it's catchy as well.
It is catchy.
So that's me. There, somebody asked me if I was going to the movie, right? Like she had the movie, and I'm like, it feels kind of weird that a 41-year-old man be crushing some popcorn and a large soda with a bunch of middle school and high school girls, and their moms. But I think this goes back to the horror thing, right?
Watching scary movies.
So and maybe
Taylor Swift's movie was.
I guess cards on the table. We're both a little on the liberty side of Christianity. The whole Paul feast thing. I just don't get the legalistic side. I really don't of really anything, But I totally respect people who say, hey, we just don't want our children exposed to that. We see the influence it is. I totally get that. And I really just try to really keep a pulse on my children and how much, even Dude Perfect, right? Which was totally harmless in my opinion. I'm like, how much is this influencing them? Guiding them,
actions, attitudes.
You talked about that in your thing. So I would just say, I definitely think there's some songs that have the wrong message that she writes. The one about karma, I think it's called Karma.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we don't agree with that, right? And so maybe really no need to listen other things. I just think if you're going to expose your children to Taylor Swift or whatever it may be, you also have to be dialed in about, hey, this is where we disagree.
100%. Just be dialed in and talk about it. That's what I would say. And, I think, as a pastor, but then as a parent too, we talk about exegeting the scriptures, and we also kind of have to exegete culture too and understand she is a great cultural, this is where is the culture? She's one of the leading voices, I would say.
Yeah.
And so to not at least be aware of it and to listen to it from an informative standpoint as a parent and as a pastor is kind of being naive to what people are thinking and feeling and what is going into their heads. I'm not saying you need to put this on loop, but I'm saying you at least at the very basis, should be aware.
Can I say a Boggy thing?
Come on.
Okay.
So, I'm ready.
I do feel like this is one of those areas where certain parents, because she's so big are like, we're going to put our foot down about you can't listen to Taylor Swift, but then they're not consistent about other areas. And it's like, just because you've heard that one so much in the news, right? And like parents, remember Harry Potter? It's like, can't watch Harry Potter, but you can watch these other things about, sorcery or whatever. Like, and so I just feel like
easy target.
I would just ask, like, is this a consistent thing in your life, right? Or are you just making this one thing because it's like you feel like you're overcompensating. Let's just be real. You're overcompensating with that one area.
That's why.
So I am not saying that I disagree with you if you as a parent consistently think my children are not going to listen to that kind of stuff. But I would say make sure it's consistent.
Yeah, and you also as a parent should know your child better than anyone.
Yeah,
so
you do.
Maybe this really does affect, and you are seeing the attitude come through, and then at the very least merits a conversation about it. And hey, I noticed this. Is it because of this? And your child's going to say, no, it's not because of that. Because they're going to be, yeah, you're right. I am being disrespectful to you because I've been listening to too much Taylor Swift. I really think here's all the things you've gotten wrong. No, they're not going to do that. But at least you're having the conversation and you're helping them become aware. Just talk through the influences. We do this with movies we watch. We do this with shows we watch. We should do this with music we watch just the same. And you need to keep a pulse on how it's affecting.
And I get that some of you don't like that I like Taylor Swift, but haters are going to hate. And I'm just going to shake it off.
And this is and she's just like the current iteration of this question. It's been, should our kids listen to Elvis? Back in the day, should kids listen to the Beatles? Should they listen to Michael Jackson? Just whoever's
Tupac.
There you go.
No, that's probably different.
On SBC, they were like, oh, that's easy. So anyway, it's just the latest iteration of that question. So, all right, now, speaking of a little Taylor Swift, it's time for a little game.
Okay.
All right. So today's game is it Taylor Swift or is it Lamentations, the Book of Lamentations?
Okay.
Now, so I'm going to read a quote.
What did I do a couple weeks ago? Nicholas Sparks or
Song of Solomon.
You were 15 for 15.
All right. So
I don't think I'm going to be 15 for 15.
To add a degree of difficulty, these questions, the phrases, if they're from Lamentations, they're the Message version of Lamentations. So there's a little bit of grace if you get these wrong.
Yes, there's a lot of grace.
Because they're from the Message. Which, by the way, is,
fine.
It's fine.
Gosh.
So it's people like, I think this is a niche conversation about the Message. Some pastors love to hate on the Message because you're like, but I'm like, it's fine for people to understand the heart of what's going on. And then
it doesn't say Twain.
Yeah, it's true. All right. It's not what you're going to study exegetically from or expository, but if it helps you understand. All right. So here we go. Question number 1 is, long were the nights when my days once revolved around you.
That's got to be T Swift.
That is T Swift. I have no idea what song, but it is.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next. I gave up on life altogether. I've forgotten what the good life is like.
That sounds like Lamentations.
It is Lamentations.
Yeah.
Wow. I kind of was like,
I could.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. I don't think she gave up on life altogether, though.
No, that would be a little bit of an overreach for Taylor Swift to say she gave up on life altogether. Okay. Next is this. It rains when you're here, and it rains when you're gone.
Ooh, I'm thinking Taylor Swift.
Good job. That was tricky because Lamentations is all, has that kind of like.
Yeah, but God never leaves. Feel. Yeah. So I doubt. Yeah.
All right. I remember it all. Oh, how I'll remember it. The feeling of hitting the bottom.
I'm going Lamentations.
Yeah, wow.
Okay,
all right. Okay.
That was tough because the Message really made that sound like Taylor Swift.
It did. That was tricky.
But she's never hit bottom.
Oh, yeah. I weep buckets of tears, and not a soul within miles. I got to start over. I weep buckets of tears, and not a soul within miles around cares.
Lamentations?
Yeah.
All right.
Weep, I think, kind of gives it away. I don't know if Taylor Swift would say. She said cry. I would have said cry.
Yeah.
All right. You'll find out what it's like to get drunk and wake up with nothing.
Taylor Swift?
No, that is Lamentations.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's a tricky one.
I should have known that because she's never had nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Dang it.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. The Lamentations were way more desperate than T Swift.
Yeah,
she would just be like, "Look what you made me do. Look
that's
what
right.
you
This
made
is all
me
your
do."
fault. This is all your fault. You did
that's
this.
a song, just so you know.
All right,
Justin.
See,
that's a song.
I know that's a song.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know.
I know. See the vulture circling dark clouds. Love's a fragile little flame.
That's Taylor
It could
Swift.
burn out.
That's Taylor Swift.
It is Taylor
Yeah,
Swift.
yeah,
Oh, you know, sing it.
Yeah, no.
Oh, come on.
Not happening.
All right. Time turns flames to embers.
Taylor Swift?
Yeah. Wow. Good job.
Okay. I've gotten one wrong, though.
But that's still pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is proving that you actually are listening to this by yourself in the car. All right. These walls that they put up to hold us back will fall down.
Wow.
The time will come for us to finally win, and we'll sing hallelujah. We'll sing hallelujah.
Lamentations?
Taylor Swift.
Oh, I was going to go with that, but I'm like, did she really say hallelujah in a song?
I know. That's what threw me off.
I'm trying to remember what song that is.
I have no idea, but we'll look it up later.
Okay.
I don't know. This is off an internet quiz.
Okay.
So, all right. You ever seen anything like this? Ever seen pain like my pain? Seen what he did to me?
Lamentations.
It is. Ooh, it's tricky right there. Seen what he did to me.
That was good. That was good.
A tricky one.
I've missed two so far, right?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, you beat me.
All right, here we go. Last one. Walls of insincerity, shifting eyes, and vacancy vanished when I saw your face.
That's got to be Taylor Swift.
That is Taylor Swift.
That has got to be Taylor Swift.
Vacancy.
But it's deep. You know, it's good writing.
That's good. That's some good stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I did this one. Oh, all right. Now here's the last one. Like shadows in a faded light. Oh, we're invisible.
Lamentations.
T Swift.
Okay. Yeah, invisible. Yeah. I should have figured that out.
That's tricky. All right.
Yeah.
So those are some good lyrics. I may just have to go put that on the Spotify shuffle.
Oh wow.
We'll see,
Wow.
I mean, it's good stuff. All right. So there you go.
Make sure you do Taylor's version though.
Yes, there you go. The
Did you
new
see
ones.
her release her new album? It's not a new album. It's the first album. It's
she
her
owns
second
her
album.
songs again because that's how the music industry
So confusing.
works. So it is so confusing.
Yeah.
It'd be like if I
Did you know that when the Broncos beat the Chiefs, they played Taylor Swift in the stadium afterwards? That's pretty savage. That's pretty savage,
man. Well, hey.
Speaking of savage,
speaking of winning and savage,
winning with
and
people,
T Swift and all these things,
and Pauly Shore,
and I'm just still like Pauly Shore.
I was looking up a good Pauly Shore quote a minute ago, and I couldn't find one.
I'm not kidding.
10 best Pauly Shore quotes.
Forgot that he was
a person.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've seen most of those movies you reference off the top of your head, but
here's a good winning with people quote by Pauly Shore. You ready?
Okay.
Just to leave us on. Serious and intense people, they drain you. But someone who's an idiot like myself, they're fun. You either hate me or love me. Deep. That's deep.
That is deep. Man.
I'm going to do a Pauly Shore or no. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, we hope that you're doing it. Thanks for joining us. We got to wrap this up.
Yeah, we do.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Boggy Talk. We are so glad you joined in the conversation. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a beat.